Welcome to my ultimate Gambit guide. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Tephrite. I've peaked top 100 playing strategist and duelist, as well as having a ton of time on Gambit thanks to me playing in the early access. On top of my knowledge and experience, I've scoured the internet for guides and tricks to give you the best guide possible. This video will be timestamped, but if you want to skip ahead to any specific part, feel free, but I highly recommend watching all the way through, as Gambit's quite a complicated guide. I'll be going over his abilities, combos you want to be utilizing, and some advanced tips and tricks. If you think I missed something or have any questions at all, I'll be streaming Marvel Rivals over at twitch.tv/Tephrite98 almost every day, and I'd be happy to help. Right, let's start out with his primary fire. Gambit throws out 3 cards in an arc, kinda like a shotgun. Similarly to Luna though, these cards either deal damage when thrown at enemies or heal when thrown at allies. He does have ammo though for this, which is not the same as the resource in the center of the screen, but we'll get into that later. With his primary fire being a shotgun type weapon, this means you don't want to be too far away from your teammates in order to get consistent healing. Another reason for you wanting to play close to your team is for you to be able to get value out of your secondary fire, which is his Bayou Bash. When using his Bayou Bash, Gambit slams his staff on the ground, dealing damage to enemies and also healing allies in the area. This also includes himself. The cool thing about his bash is it has a special property when combined with his next ability, which is his Cajun Charge. Gambit gets 2 stacks of Cajun Charge, which makes him super mobile, each charge taking about 10 seconds to refresh. Whilst dashing, if Bayou Bash is used, Gambit performs Big Easy Impact, spinning forward, dealing damage, and also healing all allies he passes through. Since Gambit needs to play close to his team for maximum healing potential, this is great for getting out of sticky situations and repositioning. If you want to use this for damage though, keep in mind that it dishes out damage in 3 different hits, which means that depending on how you hit them, it won't land all the hits. If you want to land all 3 hits for maximum damage, make sure you Cajun Charge right up into the enemy's face, and then use your Bayou Bash, as the first instance of damage is immediately when casted. With this being omnidirectional, he can use it to reposition up onto high ground. So far, Gambit seems relatively straightforward. However, this is where things get complicated as we get into his card mechanic. As I touched on earlier, Gambit has 2 resources, his regular ammo and his deck of cards, which he uses in his next 2 abilities. Gambit has 2 different types of cards at his disposal, the first of which is his Healing Hearts. When used, Gambit conjures a card consuming one of his sleight of hand cards, which triggers a self-heal. When triggered, you have the option between Flush and Raise. Selecting Flush causes Gambit to fire a full deck forward, bouncing and healing all allies hit, almost like a defensive Moon Knight. This also applies a healing boost modifier, amplifying the healing they receive. Keep in mind though, if you're just throwing this at one person, it's not gonna bounce and it will only hit them once. Selecting Raise, however, causes Gambit to launch a cluster of cards in an arc, healing and also cleansing all allies hit from everything. This includes crowd control abilities like Doctor Strange's Eye of Agamotto, all the way to dots and debuffs like Bucky's ultimate modifier, making this an insanely strong ability. That's all for his Healing Hearts. Now his second card type, which is his Breaking Spades. Similarly to Healing Hearts, when using Breaking Spades, Gambit has the option between Explosive Trick and Bidding Barrage. However, whilst the option select is active, Gambit gains a damage boost instead of a self-heal. This makes Gambit's time to kill go from 5 cards to 4 cards on most squishies. Selecting Explosive Trick, which is his Flush, causes Gambit to launch a full set of cards dealing AoE damage as well as applying reduced healing to everybody hit. This, once again, is such a fight-altering ability and gives you so much playmaking potential, allowing you to put pressure on the enemy team. Selecting Bidding Barrage though causes you to scatter all your cards in front of you, dealing AoE damage and booping the targets. Nothing too crazy, but it's great for dealing damage when you're getting jumped by enemies that are hard to hit like BP or Spider-Man. Now for his final ability, his ultimate Ragin Royal Flush. When casted, Gambit locks onto allies, healing and cleansing all negative effects. This can actually hit all your teammates if they are in range and can also be casted behind walls. On top of this, all your teammates affected by the ultimate now have increased movement speed, a jump boost, and also enhances their attacks with a single target explosive hit that goes off every few seconds, which really allows you to put the pressure on the enemy team. Alongside all of this, they also get increased ult charge rate. And finally, at the end of your ultimate, you send out an explosion of cards dealing damage to the people in the area. This type of ultimate is great to use when starting a fight, as it'll give you the upper hand. However, it can also be used to turn the tide, as healing and movement speed will allow you to recoup and re-engage with the upper hand. Now that's it for his abilities. Let's get into his team up. As of release, Gambit doesn't have a team up for himself. However, However, he is an anchor to Magneto. Similarly to his team up in Season 0 with Scarlet Witch, when activated, Magneto uses his Ace Greatsword, which strikes opponents, dealing huge damage on impact, as well as a secondary explosion shortly afterwards. Okay, now that we've gone over what Gambit can do, let's get into some playstyle tips and advanced tips and tricks. For starters, I mentioned it a bit earlier, you want to play close enough to your team that you're landing all 3 of your primary cards for maximum healing, and also are able to chip away at the enemies. Even though currently Gambit has the highest base healing out of any strategist, I found myself healing a lot more than damaging. This obviously depends on your team comp. If you're playing in a triple strategist comp, then you can go crazy and use your spade cards a lot more. However, these cards are the hardest part of his kit to master. My rule of thumb is to use your double tap cards unless a specific opportunity presents itself. This is to say that if you need to burst heal, use your Heart's Flush, not the cleanse, and if you need to burst damage, use your Spades Raise, not the AoE boop. Card management is going to be absolutely vital when it comes to mastering Gambit. Do not spam these cards. It takes 1 card to cast the initial buff and the option select, and another to throw it. With only 4 cards in your deck, you can essentially only cast 2 of these at once. Keep in mind though, since these are 2 separate abilities, you can actually cast the first card without throwing it. Meaning to say that if you only have 1 card in the bank, you can still cast a Heart or Spade card to give yourself the passive healing or damage boost. However, you can only throw the Flush or Raise when your cards recharge and another card joins your deck. Even though Gambit is a strategist, he has insane kill potential. Here's what I found to be his best kill combo. You start out by using a Spade card, which applies the damage boost to Gambit, then hit them with a primary fire and a big easy impact. Make sure you are starting your spin from right in front of your enemy for maximum damage. Once you're out, finish off your combo with either one of your Spade attacks. Bidding Barrage will make it easier to guarantee the hit. However, me personally, I'd recommend using Explosive Trick as it applies the healing reduction, so if they try to use an ability to heal themselves or get help from a teammate, this will reduce its impact. After throwing that, if they have more than 250 HP, you can finish them off with another primary fire. This isn't easy to pull off in game, but it's definitely a great combo to keep in the back of your mind when you're getting jumped or the opportunity presents itself to assassinate. I know I mentioned earlier you wanting to position close to your team, however there are a few things that can affect this. Similarly to Adam Warlock, when you know people are going to die, you want to stay a bit further back so that you can use your ultimate to res them. Well, the same can be said here for Gambit. When you know the enemy team has fight-winning ultimates like Groot ult or Strange ult or even Bucky ult, you want to stand a bit further back. Still in decent range to heal, but far back enough that when these ultimates are casted onto your team, you won't get hit by them and you can just dash into your team and go for a cleanse. This is going to be vital for Gambit. This is a bit advanced as you're going to need to get better at tracking which players have their ultimates and position accordingly. On top of this, as I mentioned earlier, when these situations can occur, you're going to want to keep 2 cards in your bank at all times, waiting for the opportunity to cleanse an ult. You might think going for more damage is great, but trust me when I say this, using an ability to counter an ultimate is the largest value you can get in this game, as it immediately puts your team in an ult advantage. Well, that's all I have for you guys today. Gambit is by far the most complicated strategist, so take your time. There's a lot to get used to and he's definitely not straightforward. If you're watching this on Season 5's release, I'm currently doing an unranked to Celestial on him over on my Twitch. However, if you're not, it's probably up on my YouTube. Either way, if you think I missed something, feel free to leave a comment down below or ask me on Twitch. If you found this at all helpful, be sure to subscribe and share with a fellow Gambit enjoyer, as I'll be posting a ton of Gambit content because he's just way too much fun. Peace.